Today will be filled with excitement, and it starts with our keynote speaker, who has done tremendous work in the mobile health business sector in Africa. We welcome Dr. Peter Breitenbach, who is the head of Vodafone's mHealth business development platform in Africa. He has extensive experience in the technology development and commercial environment, with a parallel focus on intellectual capital development. He led Frost & Sullivan's healthcare business unit in Africa for 5 years, and as CEO of Acorn Technologies, the first public-private partnership in bioincubation in Africa, helped in the creation of numerous startup businesses in the healthcare space. He has held executive and non-executive level board appointments within the biosciences, technology, and ICT sectors across state and industry tiers. He has also conceived, developed, and managed key national programs and platforms, particularly in technology, human capacity, innovation, and entrepreneurship management. Lastly, he is a medical doctor with postgraduate qualifications in anesthesia and has an MBA from the University of Cape Town.
Peter is joining us today from Cape Town, South Africa, and has devoted his Sunday evening to share his experiences, thoughts, and visions with us. Hi there, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Peter Breitenbach.
Just one thing at the outset. Is this coming fed through your laptop speakers, or is it coming through the auditorium speakers?
Auditorium.
Auditorium speakers.
Okay, so I don't have to shout. That's great, thank you. Thank you very much for that very, very kind introduction. A little bit of hyperbole was used. And it's nice to all meet you all. Certainly up at the end of the screen. But just to set the record straight, your comments about what I've done for mobile health in Africa are very much over the top, because I've done nothing. My company's done quite a lot. But I'm certainly not responsible, for instance, for any of the innovations or inventions at all. And it's really, like all things, a product of a lot of individuals and teams of different companies, including competitors that have got together and are trying to change what's happening in mobile health in Africa. I can hear an echo on my side. Is there an echo on your side as well? Okay, all right. You know, one of the key things when one looks at any kind of technology space or just a consumer space is a lot of the stuff that we use, the products, more than services and stuff, weren't around 50 years ago. And this is certainly, if you look at mobile health, this is a case in point. If you look outside of health as a vertical, and you start considering things like mobile money, we developed a platform with UK government funding 4 years ago, 3 years ago, in fact, called M-Pesa, which you may not know. And in effect, it just allows people to move money around to recipients just using a cell phone. You can redeem and obtain money at various agents. I think there's something like 15 or 20,000 agents all over Kenya. So the point is that 3 years ago it was worth zero. Last year it's worth 125 million US to the company. And by 2020 it's going to be worth like 1.5 billion US. And it's a very basic. You don't need a smartphone, you just need a cell phone. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we're trying to do in mobile health in Africa. The other key thing about all these wonderful kinds of technologies, and I'm not simple about it, is that they're all, in effect, inventions themselves are meaningless. The crucial thing is the innovation, which by definition means that you've commercialized the invention. And I know that from personal experience. Years ago, I've been taking time in medicine with a colleague to try and develop what we thought was going to be a ground-shaking technology in anesthesia. We spent about 6 months in it. Discovered when we walked in to see one of our old professors that he had an exact mock-up of our thing on his desk, which he had developed himself 5 years ago. There happened to be about 200 patents in the USPTO database. So, it's an extremely difficult thing to actually develop something for a start, and then successfully get it out into the environment that you're trying to sell it in. And one of the interesting things about mobile health is that it's really at its nascency, for want of a better description. There's a whole lot, if you look at a radar screen, there's a ton of stuff going on. pilots here and there, and not just in Africa, but all over the world. I mean, there literally are thousands. There are big firms like ourselves, there's small players, individuals in their garages. You're coming out with really great technology. The difficulty always is how do you get it out there? And how do you scale it? For instance, we don't consider that small discrete projects that are scalable, and that I don't just mean scalable within a territory itself, but also outside of the territory. And I'll show you, get to an example just now. What we're also finding very interesting in mobile health, like all things, these platforms come and then they're replaced by better platforms, by technology and so forth. But everything has a limited life cycle, hence the point that the products we use now went around 10 or 15 years ago. And often when there's an intersection of other changing business models, like for instance, if you look at the pharmaceutical environment to a great extent, medical devices for less, the whole pharma industry is undergoing paradigm change in the way it does things. For a lot of reasons, it costs $1 billion to get a drug to market successfully. And there are a whole host of issues that are affecting drugs that come with patents, and so forth. So pharma companies are re-looking at how they do business. And one of the ways they're re-looking at it is around services and adding around that. So there's quite a nice confluence between regions doing pharma companies meet. And then, of course, if you look at what's happening in infrastructure in Africa, there is none. In countries, there's nothing. There's no brick and mortar clinic in effect. And if there is a clinic, it usually is understaffed if it's staffed at all. And it's difficult for the government in these times to find it's right, because they're very limited resources. They're competing properties with these resources. And so what we would like to believe, certainly our experience has shown that companies supporting us as a pharma company, is that through a very simple technology, you can make a very significant difference in terms of increasing people's access to medicines. Amongst other, you can improve supply chain and logistics, get the port all the way through to people of no. And so it brings you to the point of what we're trying to do in Africa. At the moment, we've reached about 25, 30 projects in 8 countries in Africa. And those really are sort of set up in the SADC region, predominantly South Africa, where we've got a number of projects. And then in the East region, Kenya and Tanzania, then in Ghana. And these areas, as you'd kind of expect, sort of fit into the HIV, TB, malaria space as one. And then maternal and child health. And then a third big thing that we're looking at currently is in vaccines. And our functional sort of platform center around what we like to call an end-to-end solution. I know it's very MBA speak, but if we can just get away from that. These sort of end-to-end solutions look at capturing clinical data on the ground. In other words, how many patients are coming in, what's wrong with them, etc. Then looking at patient compliance, so patients would get the drugs, but that need to be reminded, particularly when you're looking at within the realm of vaccines, antiretrovirals, and drugs against TB. You often need to remind patients to come and get their medicines and so forth when they're available. So a very key element of what we offer is around supply chain management. In other words, kind of visibility around stocks. And our most successful project, which I'll speak to very briefly in a second, is SMS for Life in Tanzania. And then the two other key sort of application areas that we offer, which is remote worker support. So, often you'd find, for instance, in Ghana, I think there are 2,000 doctors, but there are 25,000 nurses. Now, trying to improve the peer-to-peer kind of communication between those two is often difficult. So, by using a cell phone, one is able to not just, address the immediate communication issues, but via that cell phone can offer, education, training, and so forth. Obviously, in a pretty limited way. But at least it's at its beginnings, and eventually when the technology catches up and so forth, we'll be able through tablets and various other devices to increase obviously the bandwidth of what we can offer. And then sort of allied to all of this is a whole component that we call machine to machine, which effectively you put a data card into any kind of medical device, and it not only can tell you about the sort of integrity of the device from a systems and maintenance perspective, but crucially it can tell you from a diagnostic perspective. So, in other words, we've just done a deal now with a very large medical device firm in North America that offers a particular type of technology, which unfortunately I can't go into too much detail about, but which is being moved out of intensive care units into patients' home and step-down units. And it's a very expensive type of kit. It costs an enormous amount of money to get patients to come into hospital, so why not export the treatment modality outside into a patient's home, because it's a chronic disease. And if we link it to the cloud and so forth, and to clinicians at the end of that cloud, where you can access that cloud, suddenly you brought down the costs of a treatment from $10,000 a month to effectively maybe $2,000 or $3,000. So there's a lot of cost benefit to be had with that. Another key component or element that we will be offering shortly, it's been in development for quite a while, is around anti-counterfeiting. So I think about 20 to 30% of all drugs consumed in Africa are counterfeits. So they're literally made in mom and pop outfits, with a pull press and so forth, and sold as, you can't believe the integrity that how awesome this packaging looks. It looks like a Pfizer product or a GSK product, but it's nonsense. It's just milk powder and something else. So there's a technology that we've now got on board and we'll be offering shortly that can address that, using SMS again. But what I wanted to chat to you about as well was the project we got in Tanzania called SMS for Life, which we started out a number of years ago, 3 years ago, as a pilot with a whole host of organizations. So as I said earlier, often when one does these things, you can't do it on your own. So we worked with IBM, we worked with Novartis, obviously the Ministry of Health in Tanzania, rolled out the malaria program. And when it was rolled out as a pilot in 2009, initially to 130 treatment centers, what we were trying to effectively do is address the stockout issues of antimalarials. So we pegged it against 5 antimalarial drugs, which are meant to be available in all clinics, of which there are 5,200 odd in Tanzania. Now, if any of you have been to Tanzania or anywhere else in Africa, especially in the rural areas, will understand how difficult it is to actually get a truck to move from clinic A to clinic B, let alone a bicycle. So it's an extremely difficult undertaking from a logistics point of view to ensure that all these clinics have got stock, so when a patient arrives, they can be treated, because if they're not and they've got falciparum malaria, they're going to die. So it's a big deal. And so with our partners, what we did was we effectively went out to all the clinics and registered a user in each one of these clinics. And all that user had to do was once a week, in response to a broadcast SMS that we would send out to every single one of these registered individuals, reminding them, tell us your stock counts. All the drugs, those 5 particular drugs that we were looking at, are color-coded. So there's a red box, an orange box, a green box, a blue box, and another box, let's say a purple box. And all I had to do was enter an SMS string that went R1, B5, etc., etc. Those units, of course, describing how many boxes of that particular drug they had. And last year we started scaling it up with MMV and the SDC, the Swiss Development Corporation, who basically paid for it. We scaled it up across all 5,100 clinics. And so once a week, all these nurses or clinical staff will send us an SMS, we collect the data, and we can tell all the registered users, you can log into the website, or they get push emails, or they can access it in their PCs, whatever the case may be. They can see exactly on a dashboard, what's happening. Not just on a regional basis, but also on a district basis, down to individual clinics and so forth. And where there is a stock out, the district medical officer, he would be in charge of, let's say, 15 or 20 of these clinics, then just gets on a phone and ships stock from one center to another center. And then further up the chain, obviously, you have the zonal stores that the drugs come into. The district medical officer gets hold of the zonal store, and they can push out more drugs down that particular arm of the chain. I mean, such a powerful, simple thing, and it works so well. So, it really isn't rocket science. And this is the kind of thing that Africa needs. I think a lot of us I certainly have, and still do, you make huge assumptions around what people need. And how technology can actually solve the day. But technology will never ever solve the day in itself. There's always a human interface and a human element, and that's absolutely crucial to the ongoing success of this particular program, which we're now expanding within Tanzania. Our long-term vision for mobile technology is that, as I said earlier, there's a lot of stuff on the radar screen, and most of these projects that you see and read about, most of them will fail. Probably about 90% of all projects will fail. When I say fail, I mean that they won't ever attain some level of scalability, at least not from a commercial point of view, which is obviously crucial to us because that's what we're in for. And so, I think if we look at where Vodafone was 5 years ago, I think there were three or four employees within Vodafone that were dedicated to mHealth. Now they're well over 100. And that just gives you an idea of how quickly things are moving in this particular field. So we certainly like to see ourselves as the thought leaders in mobile health. Whether that particular thing that I just said is actually shared by our competitors, I have no idea. But I think by virtue of what we've done and the way we've scaled up with people, it's something that we take incredibly seriously. And we certainly see Africa, not only Africa, playing a huge role in this going forward. In terms of the challenges that come with what we have done and what we aim to do, scalability is the key one. It's hardly you take this technology, the SMS for life, outside of Tanzania. Can you take it to Ghana? Can you take it to South Sudan, etc., etc.? And so scalability depends on a whole lot of other kind of levers. So, people need cell phones. There needs to be coverage. Ideally, they need to own their own cell phones. Because it becomes extremely costly, especially if you're talking about smartphones, about deploying 1,000 smartphones within, let's say, for instance, a logistics system. Which brings me to the second point, which is as crucial, who pays? And that's one of the reasons why I believe that 80 to 90% of all mobile health projects fail, is because there's no certainty around long-term funding. There's no longevity of these projects. And I think if you consider the way your technology life cycle is, and that whole kind of concept of early adopters, laggards, etc., that's exactly where mHealth has found itself. We really are at the nascent stage of it. So there are lots of really cool things. I mean, we're talking to a company in San Francisco, who I won't name, but I mean, they've got such a simple thing, and it's so powerful, and we're hoping to do business. And it's basic stuff, and this is where we're starting to sort the wheat from the chaff, as it were. So a lot of things you would expect will fall by the wayside. But I think the simple ones that can reach many people across different countries and that you can then stack, additional functionality on top of, those are the ones that are going to get legs going forward. Another challenge is that I think, as I said earlier, people view technology and solve and I don't think in many respects, so I don't mean to disrespect others, I don't think in many respects that a lot of governments around the world, not just in Africa, really understand a lot of it. It's one has to sort of there has to be an incentive for people to use it, which is why simplicity is such a key thing here, because you can go in with iPads and various other wonderful devices, but are they going to be used, their full potential? And so it comes back to this whole kind of and so forth. So I've kind of jumped all over the place and so forth, and I apologize for that. But I've certainly left adequate time for any questions, which I'll be happy to take if this indeed is the forum where we can do that. If not, have asked my colleagues in front of you to play a video which summarizes our experiences in Tanzania with SMS. Thank you very much.